A footage from Gaza's Nasser hospital shows a second Israeli strike hitting rescue workers after an initial attack, leaving at least 15 people dead, including 4 journalists. The IDF has yet to comment on this incident. Meanwhile, reportedly, an Al Jazeera cameraman was also killed in Gaza, according to Al Jazeera spokesperson. Now, for this discussion, we're joined by Dan Perry. He's a world affairs analyst, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Dan, for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. In light of international criticism like that from Casper Veldkamp, how is Israeli media covering this impact of Israel's current military operations?
So far, the coverage I've seen in Israel is pretty minor, not because they don't care, but because there's great confusion and they don't know the facts. The coverage I've seen speaks of the earlier reports about the strike, which include civilian deaths, but not the journalists. In the last 15 minutes or so, I'm starting to hear on the radio discussion about the journalists that were killed, but they don't know what happened. And this is typical of what's been going on in the war. Gaza is a very, very densely packed place. Israel is bombarding all kinds of civilian areas. And the story is always the same. They believe that Hamas is using those areas for refuge. They believe operations are planned out of those areas. They sometimes claim that the hospitals serve as even offices of Hamas and weapons storage depots. And that it's not necessarily untrue. And it certainly is also true that these are actually hospitals as well. It's an unbelievable tragedy. And I think we're seeing and this is an assessment. It's not really knowledge on the Israeli side. I think we're seeing something of a light trigger finger at this point in the case of Israel. I mean, you look at the devastation and it's inescapable that you have to suspect that. In the case of Hamas, I have no illusions about them whatsoever. They really do use mosques and schools and hospitals and civilian neighborhoods to do their operations, what's left of Hamas. But they've succeeded in rebuilding. And I just don't know, and I don't think anyone knows the facts around this particular case, but certainly it reflects that Gaza is unbelievably dangerous for anyone who's there, and that includes the journalists. I do not believe Israel is targeting journalists, except in cases where they claim that those journalists are also operatives for Hamas, which again is not inconceivable. I think the world has some degree of delusions about what we're dealing with, what the world is dealing with. As regards Hamas. This is a jihadist mafia that is not above the lowest possible manipulations in order to achieve their ends. And their ends are basically nonstop fighting against Israel and creating a situation where Israel, to go after them, is forced to also create tremendous damage in civilian infrastructure and among civilian lives. It is a total tragedy, and it is reflective of the need that exists to end the war quickly. There is simply no way that this war goes on without a great ugliness and a small likelihood that Israel can actually achieve its aims.
And how do you assess the current dynamics of domestic politics? Is really what we see the visuals coming in from Tel Aviv, like the growing opposition and calls for bringing hostages back. Is it really the case?
Oh, it's absolutely the case that the majority of the people of Israel, 70 to 80%, would end the war, even if that means that for the moment, Hamas remains in charge of Gaza. I think that's more bad for the Palestinians than it is for Israel. I don't know too many Gazans who, when they're free to speak, will tell you they still want Hamas to be ruling them. So Israel doesn't want that outcome, and I think neither do the Palestinians. But they're tired of the way this war is being prosecuted. They can see that there is potential here for many more years of essentially insurrection, with Israel ultimately being saddled with control over 2 million people who will need housing and medical services and feeding and education and administration of every kind, and they don't want any part of that, nor have they the resources for that. And of course, the population would be hostile. So I think the Israeli public, by and large, is ready to cut and run, and they certainly want to prioritize the return of the hostages. The government is a somewhat different story because far-right elements that control the government want the war to go on, and they plainly want to have permanent control over Gaza and to settle it with Jews. But that's a very small minority view in Israel, and I think Netanyahu, if he were responsible, would absolutely accept the offer of the opposition in Israel, the moderate liberal opposition, to give him umbrella in the parliament, not vote against the government, even if he loses his majority, in order to enable a deal to be done. It is almost madness, in my personal opinion, not to.
And do you think the growing disapproval of current Netanyahu's government lead to any changes or shifts in Israeli politics?
I mean, the shift would happen in the next election, which will be sometime during 2026, when the way things look right now, Netanyahu is extremely likely to lose those elections. So what might happen is, as those elections approach, his motivation to end the war somehow and shift gears altogether to a whole different diplomatic paradigm of maybe peacemaking and doing peace with Saudi Arabia and Lebanon and Syria, all of those things may conceivably be possible if the war ended and if Israel adopted a different posture towards the Palestinians. I can see him going in that direction because he'd want to win the elections. Whether the people of Israel could be so easily fooled, I cannot say. But that would be, if I was advising him politically, that's what I would advise. And that probably argues for ending the war right now, because he can do a deal with the opposition that would end the war right now, give him maybe 8 more months in power, and then he can start making peace moves. The idea of achieving the goal of eradicating Hamas fully by military means is not science fiction. It can be done, but it involves sacrificing the remaining hostages. It involves more tremendous damage to the Palestinians, and many Israelis care about that, and even the ones who don't can't be oblivious to the damage done to Israel's reputation, international standing, economy, and strategic position. With the continuation of that, the cost is unbelievably high.
Yes.
And it would certainly involve a repeat of the mistake the Americans made in Afghanistan and in Iraq, where you end up being in hostile territory for decades and then leave with your tail between your legs.